Hey everybody, thanks for joining me as I take a look at the death metal band Mitochondrion. Mitochondrion formed in 2003 in British Columbia, Canada, and they are not only my favorite Canadian death metal band, but probably one of the most underrated bands in the extreme metal underground right now. So, sound-wise, you could broadly describe them as black and death metal, but within that category, influences range from things like old school incantation to Portal, all the way to uh, the war metal side of things. They have a unique triple vocal attack, just all slightly different flavors of death metal vocal, but all just cranked up to 10 and nasty. And sometimes they're all going on at once. I saw a review on YouTube saying it sounds like a bunch of demented cavemen just gurgling and making a racket. Totally accurate, and one of my favorite things about the band. But we're gonna start at the beginning with the demo Through Cosmic Gaze, originally released in 2006, but this is the 2025 re-release on Dark Descent. So one song on here, Eternal Contempt of Man, that will go on to be on the debut album, but the other 5 songs are, to my knowledge, unique to this demo. Overall, this is definitely less busy and suffocating than what's to come. A bit more normal extreme metal, but their unique character is already present. One thing that kind of differentiates it a bit is the vocals. There are some high vocals on here. I probably overuse the comparison, but when I hear a extreme metal band doing the extreme vocals with the odd high-pitched scream to accent things, I think of a prescriptor from Absu, and that's present on this demo here. My favorite track on here is probably In the Reign of Tusk, a little bit more of a accessible epic track, but definitely my favorite on here. Now we're going to look at the debut full length from 2008, Arca Aeon. This was my first exposure to the band in the pages of Metal Maniacs magazine in the last year or two that the magazine was functioning. And that was in Nathan T. Burke's Apocalyptic Rays column. That was always one of my favorite parts of the magazine. And again, that was where I saw this album with some high praise. I didn't get the album right away, but it definitely stuck in my mind and picked this up later. So this is probably my favorite full-length album by the band overall, due to its variety, sound, and playability. Overall, I just find it the most engaging, and it also is probably the most polarizing in terms of some of the moments on here. So look at 2 of my favorite tracks on here. You have Infernal Weapons Summons, which is probably the most closest I've heard the band come to war metal or something like fellow Canadians' Revenge. On the other hand, you have Wraith-like, which is probably the most accessible moment of the band's career, where they kind of take off the gas a bit with some epic, emotive soloing that then concludes with a completely demented scream on an album full of completely demented vocals. So if I leave you with anything, I'd say check out Arca Aeon from 2008. Okay, next up we're going to look at 2011's Parasignosis, their first album for Profound Lore Records, a label that they are still on to this very day. And this is probably the album that has earned them a reputation of sounding somewhat like Portal. I love Portal, but I prefer what the band did before and after this release. So this one is my least favorite due to its over density, somewhat sameness, and it's not my favorite ending to an album, let's just say. The second last track is a doomier song that doesn't do a whole lot for me, and then it concludes with a lengthy ambient track, or more appropriately, like a hellish soundscape kind of thing that they close the album off. The album overall is very dark, and it just puts you in the muck for the full hour, but I don't really emerge from it with a lot of memorable moments. Nevertheless, my favorite songs on here are the title track, Parasignosis, and Tetra Virulence. In 2013, the band will put out a EP, Anti-Numerology. I don't own that, but I believe it was 3 songs, and I guess I never really liked it enough to pay the prices I'm seeing on eBay out there. But let's get my hands on it one day. And then that's going to bring us to In Crony an Hour. This is a 7-inch, a song apiece by Mitochondrion and their, I call it a brother band, Auroch. I have some Auroch material, and I plan on getting some more, so maybe we'll talk about Auroch on another day. But the one new Mitochondrion song on here is called Gilded Words Reaped. And I took a look at Metal Archives, and the one review there kind of mirrors my opinion on it. Twisted, weird, and very progressive death metal track with psychedelic riffs, but overall somewhat hard to get into. And I agree. I'd say this kind of mid-period is my least favorite material from the band. But this was put out on Dark Descent. Nice packaging here. And we'll look at the Auroch song on another day. I'll also take another detour to discuss seeing Mitochondrion and Auroch, for that matter, live back in 2016. It was a 2-day metal fest in Toronto, and when I Google it, I cannot find much information about that. There were several bands on the day I attended, but the only ones I remember are Mitochondrion, Auroch, and fellow Canadians Phobocosm from Montreal. But they played at Coalition TO. That was a really cool venue that has been closed for a long time now. And I believe Mitochondrion and Auroch, considering they share a number of members, there was some stage attire changes between sets. But 2 very different bands, although, as I've said, many links in common. So between Parasignosis and the most recent full-length album, Vitroseptome, there would be a long 13-year wait. So Vitroseptome, still on Profound Low Records. This is a double album. And I listened to an interview on the Dreams of Consciousness podcast, and I found it pretty enlightening. I would think the guys in Mitochondrion would be pretty secretive, but it was a pretty candid interview. I listened to it a couple times. It was very interesting. And they don't tell you much about what the concept of the album is. They just said, listen to a song here and there, listen to it on shuffle, listen to one disc at a time, listen to it all in one sitting. There's no wrong way to listen to it. Just take in the music, take in the artwork, take in the cover. Quite the booklet here with all the lyrics, artwork for each song. So I've had this album since the week it was released, and I took the band at their word. Just put your time in with it. And you know what? After all this time, I can't say I really have come to any conclusions. The lyrics are very complicated and intense. I'm going to say it just seems like occult warfare. That's what I'm seeing when I'm looking at these lyrics. So, yeah, I've spent a lot of time with this for the last year and a half. I actually remember the first time I listened to it. I was going to see Gladiator 2 in the theater, and I stuck this in the car stereo. And it right away, I was thinking of one of my favorite tracks on here, Flail Fexfregum, which just kind of, when I look at that song title, just kind of reminds me of like a Roman emperor or something. My other favorite track on here is Oblathemesis. On that same interview I referenced earlier, this guy said, a lot of things on this album you're not going to hear unless you've got like a head full of drugs, and you're going to hear a whole lot more. I'm definitely not into hard drugs, but there was a night where I had the gummy going, cracked open a book, and I fell asleep. And just as I was kind of waking up and listening to that song, Oblathemesis, I was hearing all kinds of keyboards and weird bits that I never noticed before. And that has become one of my favorite tracks on this album. A lot to chew on, quite the statement, and I hope it's not another 13 years until Mitochondrion release new music, but we'll see what the future holds. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.